Hi there everyone. This is my first stash busting tutorial, so I hope you enjoy it. If you're anything like me, you will probably have a large supply of peel-offs. These are things that I've had squirreled away for quite a number of years. I started making cards probably about 25 years ago, and I don't really use them anymore, so I thought I'd like to create a background using peel-offs. I thought it would be a different technique. So I've got a piece of card that I'm going to start with. This is my panel that I'm going to decorate, and the first thing I'm going to do is just tape it to my board so it doesn't move while I line things up. I'm going to use a set square to start with. This is just to make sure that my pattern or the design that I'm creating looks straight on my card. I'm putting stripes in the bottom right hand corner and I want them at a 45-degree angle, so I just use my set square like this and I carefully line them up. Now you don't have to do this, obviously you could do this just by eye, but being an engineer, this is how I chose to do it. The peel-offs themselves, I've not used these before, so they're relatively sticky, and I'm just, as you can see, going to line up and put in 3 stripes in the bottom corner of my design. I only use the set square for the first one, and then the rest is done by eye. Then what I'm going to do is going to take my other peel-offs. This is one with Christmas trees on, and there are some beautiful little snowflakes and stars, and I'm going to use the snowflakes to apply around the card, just in a random pattern. No rhyme or reason for where I put them. It's quite a good idea to have some off the card as well, just for a little bit of interest. So I just carry on sticking these on. I'm going to get the design that I'd already done because it's just to save time on the video. So here's one that I've produced, and you can see I've put plenty of snowflakes all over it. The next thing that I'm going to do is ink. So I'm using my tumbled glass to start with. This is going to be my base colour. I'll just take the masking tape off the top, otherwise we'll have a gap on the panel. And I'm going to very gently apply ink all over the card, just in a small circular motion. It doesn't have to be blended completely. I want quite a cloudy look, because this is going to be like a sky scene. You just have to be really careful when you're going over the edge of some of the peel-offs, especially if they're ones that you've used before. Just take your time, take it slowly, building up the colour gradually around the edges, and you do this until you get the design that you are happy with. So as you can see, I'm just going all the way around, building up the colour. Where I've obviously caught a little bit there of the tape, I'll just stick it back down and carefully go over it with my blending tool. I've got lots of peel-offs, and I think this would be a really good idea for lots of other cards. I've just chosen to do a Christmas card for this tutorial. I've got some amazing butterfly ones, and even using the words and things like that, I think that would be a really good background. So I'm just finishing off now with the blue. Now For my colour combination, I've chosen to use Wilted Violet. This combination is one of my favourites, and I think especially for a Christmassy, wintry card, I think it works really well. I'm just going over the outside edge in Wilted Violet, but it's obviously up to you. You can blend it as far into the panel as you want. I just want it really round the edges, but leaving the blue in the centre. There's loads of really good colour combinations that would look really good. The other one that I like are the pinks and the reds, so even like picked raspberry and squeezed lemonade. I think that would look like a really good summery spring card with butterflies maybe. Just have a play and see what inks you've got. So I'm building up the Wilted Violet around the outside edge, again being careful over the peel offs so they don't ruck up while you're blending. But you don't need to take too much care blending, because you, like I said, you want that cloudy look. I'm nearly done. Okay, so the next step is I'm going to create some water splashes over the card. So it's just to add a bit of texture, a bit of difference. I'm using a craft mat because obviously flicking water is going to get everywhere. So I've just got some normal tap water and I'm going to squirt a little bit into the palm of my hand. Then I will just flick it from my fingers all over the design. Obviously add as much as you want. The more water, the more of the bleached look that you will get. You need to allow the water to sink into the ink, and then maybe for a minute or so. And you can actually see it lifting some of the ink. So I'm going to take a piece of kitchen roll and just put that over the top of my design and mop up the excess water. And you'll see some of the inks actually removed onto the back of the paper towel. And you want to try and make the card as dry as possible. So you can just see there the white patches where I've sprayed. I'm really pleased with that look. Just mop up carefully. And then now I'm going to use a white Posca pen. You can use just white acrylic paint. You might need to water it down, but all I'm going to do is flick the white paint again all over the background. I'm just shaking the pen to make sure it's all mixed. The way I do this is to tap the pen with a ruler, and you can just about see the spatters. You need to make sure that your work surface is protected, because the paint will probably go everywhere that you don't want it. So don't be doing this on your dining room table unless it's well protected. I'm just flicking as much paint as I want over the background till I get the effect that I'm happy with. Okay, now ideally you would put this to one side and let this dry, because if I use a heat gun it will potentially cause the peel offs to lift away. So that would be my suggestion, that you leave it to dry naturally. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm just going to give this a quick blast with my heat gun. Obviously the heat gun will cause the adhesive on the back of the peel offs to activate, and I like to try and get as many uses out of these peel offs as possible. I can probably do 4 or 5 cards with a peel off before I have to throw it away, so it's quite a cost-effective way of doing a background. So I'm just making sure that my card is thoroughly dry. Because you've got the ink and the water and the paint, you do need to make sure that it is really dry before you carry on, and before you remove the peel offs as well. You don't want to risk smudging anything. So I'm quite happy with this, and now very carefully remove the peel offs. You can put them to one side so you can reuse them, or you can throw them away. It's entirely up to you. I'll just show you, I'll just take a few off and then you can see a close-up of what it looks like. But I think it leaves a really good outline in white. I'm really pleased with the effect, and it's using something that otherwise has just been sat in my drawers for many years. So I'll bring on one that I've already removed all of the peel offs from. You can see the pattern in the background. Really happy with this. This is my card blank. It's an A6 that I've pre-cut and scored, and it's going to sit on the top like this. You just want a small border around the edge. I'm going to have a slot in the centre, which is where my sentiment is going to be. So the first thing I need to do is actually cut into the card. I want it to line up with my 45-degree stripes at the bottom. So I'm going to use my set square again, just to line up with my ruler to make the cut. So as you can see, I'm just trying to work out where I want it. You can make that slot in the card wherever you want, and it obviously you don't have to use a set square and a ruler, but that's just my choice. So I'm just going to use my craft knife and cut along. You only need to make one cut, don't worry. We will sort out the other panel, the top part of the panel, later on. So now I've got my background card, and this is how it's going to look. I'm just lining up the bottom panel to start with. This is what I'm going to use to determine where my sentiment's going to go. So I've chosen a stamp that I like. It's obviously a Christmas sentiment, and that's going to sit on the card itself. So I'm just using the bottom panel to line up the stamp. Very carefully now I'm going to transfer this to my stamping platform. Now you could use an acrylic block. I just prefer to use a stamping platform. I'm going to be embossing this, and I like to be able to make sure that there's plenty of embossing ink on the card before I heat set it. So I just use my magnets to hold the panel in place, and I'll pick up the stamp with the lid of my stamping platform. Next, I'm going to use a anti-static bag. Now I'm going to use a white embossing powder, so I don't want any flecks of embossing powder on the card. So I use my anti-static bag to make sure I don't get any in the wrong places. And I'm using a Versamark watermark stamp pad. I'll do this twice just to make sure that there is enough ink to make a good impression. Just carefully remove it from the stamping platform, and then I'm going to use a Wow. It's an ultra fine embossing powder. So I've just got a piece of paper to collect any excess, and I'm going to sprinkle this over the sticky stamped word, and tapping off any excess. Just carefully, you don't want to knock too much off. I'm quite happy with that. There's just a couple of little flecks that I'm going to just carefully remove with the tip of my scalpel, and I just blow them gently away. So I'm going to just tip my embossing powder back into the pot and put the lid on before I knock it over and make a mess everywhere. I like the contrast of the super bright white against the jade coloured cardstock that I've used. Now I'm making sure that my heat gun is really hot. If you make the heat gun hot before you start embossing, it doesn't warp the card as much. And I'm going to emboss or heat emboss from the below, so that gets like a smoother finish to the embossing. It just takes a minute, and then you can hopefully see the embossing turn. I still think this is the most amazing technique. I love it every time I do it. Okay, and there's my embossed sentiment, which I'm really pleased at. So next I'm going to bring in the panels that I've created, and so this is the bottom one. That's the one I'm going to focus on first. Now you can obviously have these flat to your card, so you would just glue them down at this point. I've decided that I want them to be raised up, so you could use foam tape or silicone glue, 3D glue gel, anything really to raise them up. I like to reuse packaging because it's something that I have a lot of, and I do like upcycling and recycling things, so I've just got some thinnish card for this one. I don't want it too thick. I mean, I have used packaging, brown packaging from a famous online delivery store. I'm just cutting a panel of thin card that will stick to the bottom of my front panel. I'm just using some silicone based glue, that's my glue of choice. It's what I can get here in Spain, but it's identical to the collal glue, which I absolutely love, but I can't get hold of over here. Just put enough on and then stick that to the background panel. Make sure it's all firm down. And then I'm going to put some more glue on the card packaging, and then I'll adhere this bottom panel to the bottom right hand corner of my card. Make sure it's lined up and I'm happy with it, and you can still see the sentiment in the centre. I'm just firming it down. Next I'm going to do the same thing basically with the top panel. Now because we've cut a slot in it, I'm going to have to cut off or trim off the top. So I line it up so that I'm happy with how it looks, making sure that the edges are lined. And then I'm going to use just a pencil to make a small mark to identify where I'm going to reduce the height. I'll just put a mark there and I'll just trim that. I'm using my guillotine just for quickness. So that's going to line up there. Now again, I cut a section off the top, so I need to go over the top edge with my wilted violet. I think it's these little finishing touches that make the card a little bit special. So taking the time to do this is really worth it. Again, I want this raised up, so I'm using the same card, cutting a piece that's going to be adhered to the back, and then that will be adhered to my card blank. I'm going to rest something on top just to keep it flat while the glue sets as well. You don't need too much glue, but obviously enough so that it sticks. Again, making sure that it's adhered properly. Glue on the cardboard packaging, and then this will be placed on the card blank in the top left hand corner. Just taking care to make sure it's all lined up, that you've got a nice slot, if you will, around the sentiment that you've embossed. And I'm really pleased with this. Just firming it down, hold it for a second while my glue takes. And that's the basis really for this card. I'm going to do a little bit more decorating, so I've got some stickles glue, and it's the Stardust one that I'm going to use for this, and I'm just going to dot the Stardust stickles around the card. You can obviously add whatever you like. You could put glitter around the edges, just go to town with it really. I just want these cards to be simple, but you know, quite subtle but stunning. And I'm also going to put a few sequins on. I've got some turquoise jade sequins. I'm going to dot these around the card as well. Use my tweezers because they're fiddly. So I think in terms of using up things that we've got in our stash, I think this is quite a good way of using up those peel-offs. They're not something that I would probably use anymore in my card designs. I think years ago that was all you could use for sentiments apart from stamps, so they were very fashionable. But like I said, I've had these for probably 25 years and not used them, so it's quite a good way to use them up. I think I'll definitely be trying some of the other peel-offs that I've got for cards for the spring and the summer, and I've also got some stickers that were my son's with like Christmas stockings and things like that, so I think I might have a play with those as well. Just using some of my Collal tacky glue to stick my sequins on. And that's basically it. That's my card done and dusted. So it'll take some time to dry properly, but here's the first one that I made as an example. As you can see, I've changed the angle of the slot, but it's entirely up to you where you put that design. So I hope you try it, and thanks for joining me today. Let me know how you get on. Thank you.